That way, if something happens, I have time to do it again. Okay, and we're not going to look at that. We're not going to look at this. Okay, hello and welcome everyone to our second installment of our workplace exclusive series, SUNY Show and Tell. Today's program is titled, Hosting Civic Engagement Events on Campus, Managing the Good, the Controversial, and the Very Challenging. If you are joining us for the first time, this workplace-only series provides us the opportunity to learn more about the amazingly innovative and impactful work that our SUNY colleagues are engaged in. Today, we are speaking with SUNY Maritime's Dr. Mark Meyerowitz about how campuses can effectively prepare for a successful and mindful civic engagement event, including campus collaborations, effective marketing, and managing expectations. So Mark has a great pedigree, and I encourage you to look at his biography on Maritime's website and reach out to him after the presentation. But he really plans and executes a variety of campus events, including Constitution Day, as well as a distinguished speaker series and a library lecture series. He also has introduced a series of table talks where students bring dinner and engage in guided discussions on topics of significance related to civic and political issues, which we all know could be a little bit of a minefield, especially in today's day and age. I met Mark while moderating a session at the 2018 SUNY Applied Learning Conference, and Mark's experience with these types of events made him an ideal person for the series. Before we get started, I just want to remind you that while this is streaming on Workplace, we will share it with you via YouTube upon request, and it will be archived in the SUNY in the News group if you want to look at it at a later time. You can also follow up with me via the email on the screen, and we'll share Mark's contact info at the end of the presentation. So we talked about that we met at the SUNY Applied Learning Conference, so I just wanted to give them a shout out, that team, and they had provided some metrics for us to give a brief update about what they've been doing in their work with all of the campuses and talking about students and service learning. So we thank them for providing this data to us and look forward to hearing more as they continue their good work and their growth across all the campuses. Without further ado, I want to get to our main event. So Mark, thank you for joining me today.
It's a pleasure.
Awesome. So I have some questions for you, and I figured just to explain to everyone that are watching right now, I'll ask you some questions. We'll kind of go back and forth. I really think of this as a conversational case study. So, we might pop around the slides a little bit, jump around, and we are streaming it on Workplace. Obviously, most of you are probably listening there. So you can actually ask a question there, and either we'll interrupt the stream at that time or we'll hold it until the end. And hopefully we'll have a little bit of time for questions there as well. So my first question is, how do you become the lead on these projects in your campus? Oh, there's your picture. And, we have some examples, especially you take a larger role in the Constitution Day programming at Maritime. And, when we're talking about your campus events and how you became the lead, can you also kind of talk about who shares these roles with you?
Well, thank you, Kelly, first of all, for inviting me. And it was a pleasure to work with the Applied Learning team and having you as the moderator at Tarrytown at the Applied Learning Conference.
No problem.
And for giving me the opportunity to share with my colleagues some of these ideas, which I think are quite exciting. The first point that I wanted to make is, and really is what you just asked, is these projects are really team efforts here at Maritime, because many of our departments are involved in planning. These things don't just happen on their own. We work very closely with the library, with facilities, with our graphics people, with communications, with student affairs, with our regiment, with IT, with the provost's office, who really kind of oversees these programs, and with the faculty. And we try to involve all aspects of the campus in this planning. And I think a good way to start, if I may, is on Constitution Day,
Right.
where we had two programs. And just to give you as a paradigm of how we did this and how this is done. I just consider it a privilege to be asked to coordinate some of these programs. And also, I think that I want to express my appreciation to the Maritime Administration for allowing me the privilege of coming up with ideas that are receptive, that are received, by the campus, by the college. And I believe what I've seen in terms of the benefits that we reap is something like a student comes to me today or yesterday and says, when's the next table talk, which is what you mentioned before. The students are coming to me and asking me about it. That's really what we're trying to do. We're not trying to cajole the students to come to something and that they won't enjoy. We want them to come and enjoy discussing matters of civic importance. So if I could start a little bit with Constitution Day, if that's okay with you,
Yes.
and tell you a little bit about the aspects. You can scroll back to 2017 for a moment, which is example 1, and then we'll go to example 2,
Sure.
and then I'll focus on that. So you'll see that our flyer is really focused on prizes and raffles and door prizes and T-shirts and the Twitter contest. That's true, but there's a lot of substance. Of course, we put that together in that way in order to bring students in the door. But what the students find very interesting is the substance of these programs. So, for example, if you go to 2018, which is example number 2, that one was very interesting because we are a maritime college. So the idea was, why don't we bring the sailors and ship historian from the USS Constitution? And we actually had sailors dressed in period uniforms interacting with our students. It was absolutely fantastic. And we also had an Alexander Hamilton reenactor. And another connection, another symbiosis with Maritime was the fact that we have Fort Schuyler here, which is named after the father-in-law of Alexander Hamilton. So we had our Hamilton reenactor talk about the Schuyler family. And if you know your Hamilton musical, there's actually an entire section there about Schuyler and the Schuyler sisters. And of course, Hamilton was married to Eliza Schuyler. So we had a wonderful nexus to that. In addition, what we try to do in these programs is to have very important substance. I should mention in passing that we did a voter registration drive, which was very exciting. And that was something actually the SUNY chancellor had as a program or something that was being encouraged. And we were right in sync with that. And we signed up many students to register to vote. In addition, what we did was, I just want to mention also just kind of the gestalt of it. We start off, because we have the regiment, etc., we start off with the presentation of the colors, which is quite beautiful. And at this particular program, this was right after the passing of Senator McCain. We did a tribute to Senator McCain, a moment of silence for 9/11. Then we had our local assemblyman make some remarks on civics, which was really fantastic. He did a terrific job. And then we had presenters in both of the programs who are substantive presenters. We had Judge Ingram, who is a Supreme Court judge in New York, who is a member of our faculty. And he did this in both presentations in 17 and 18. Give a short presentation on, one year was the First Amendment, the other year was the Second Amendment. And then we also had Skype with an author who, very interesting, Brian Stolaws, who exonerated a defendant, an inmate on death row. And the students were very, very interested in that. Again, a lot of substance is being presented here as well on a theme, again, the First Amendment or the Second Amendment. And I should mention also that we try to loop in our pre-law club. We have a pre-law club on campus, which actually I'm the advisor to. I'm a lawyer as well. And so they also felt very empowered, and they got to sign up lots of students. So there are many things that we do. Besides the fact that we also had, which was quite amazing this year, we had 2 students actually doing the rap from the Hamilton musical. So, I could go on and on. I mean, I could spend forever and ever. I just want to give you a feel for the with a tremendous, actually a lot of complexity in putting this together. And again, working with a team of all the different departments and campus and all the different aspects of campus to make this a success. So I consider it a privilege to have been able to help to coordinate it, but at the same time, I thank all of my colleagues for doing this. Before we did the program, we worked with the library, and we had sort of a little exhibit that we put together, which we try to have a connection to, and we had the USS Constitution. We had a model of that ship, and we showed that in the library, and then we brought it over to the atrium where we had the conference. So on that one, we try to be very innovative, but again, we do a Twitter contest where we give a prize for the best tweet, which actually was a student who took a picture. We had a flag cake. We actually ordered a flag cake, and I think our provost thought that up. So thank you, Dr. Hoffman, for that brilliant idea. And then we had our Hamilton reenactor stand there and cut the cake with the students. Absolutely beautiful. So we had a tweet with that. And then we had a trivia quiz with our faculty, students, staff, and we actually had questions about the Constitution, and then we gave prizes away. So we're giving prizes away, and we had a raffle, and we had a Twitter contest. So it was fun, and T-shirts. So the kids came and they were excited about all that. But in the meantime, they were absorbing some interesting information about the Constitution and history and Hamilton and all of that. So it was quite substantive, and we're working now at the present time for next September's program. And, we're trying to see if we can, either match or outdo ourselves. So that's where we are.
Yeah, and my question I was going to ask you was the timeline for something that's that complex. And I know when we had been talking about planning this, you had mentioned, and I'm going to quote you need to have a vision and then plan to achieve that vision and obviously to fulfill it successfully and to scale. So curious when the first conversations start regarding this event. For you, it's Constitution Day. For another campus, it might be a homecoming or an awareness week. How long and how often are you meeting?
Well, I've already been working on this in the spring semester, and we definitely start in spring, and then we do work over the summer as well on this, and have meetings periodically with a team meeting to see where we are. But clearly, the vision is key because you need to have a focus, and we're still working on developing that focus to try to understand what that should be for 2019, and there are many options in how to develop that. So right now, we don't have that finalized, but we're working on that and trying to see which aspect of the Constitution we want to focus on, and then build around that. It really is also, it kind of evolves too, because if we sit as a team early on, and we're, again, the key is early on, because you can't wait till the last minute, because the semester starts in our case in late August, and then we're in September and we're right around the corner. So we cannot start this in the last minute. We have to start in advance. But as a team, ideas evolve. So somebody might come up with an idea. Well, what about this? What about that? So that's why a team effort is very, very important. So yes, vision is the key. The theme on this one is the key to understand what you want to do. And I also prepare and work with IT and with our team to try to plan it out. And we do one or two, at least, mock run-throughs of the whole program. We don't do the entire program, but we go into our Maritime Academic Center, into the large multipurpose room, and we actually go through, and if there's something we're going to pull up on the web or whatever, we actually run through it, and we had our kids come and do the Hamilton rap. We kind of did all that to see how it times out and how it paces out before we do the actual event. So that helps a lot, and then
Oh, great. So I'm going to advance to the next slide here. Are you there? Are you there, Mark? Can you say something if I make sure you're still there with me?
Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah, I've got you. All right. We had a little minor break there, so I apologize.
Right, no problem. Now it says I'm muted. I don't know what it means. Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you just fine. So,
Okay.
So we're going to jump ahead to some of your newer series or most recent idea, Lightning Talks.
Yeah. Well, the Lightning Talks, very, very important. And we really have reaped tremendous benefits from this. The idea originally was to do this as part of our program in English 101 and with our lead program, and to try to get the students in particular programs to come but this has really evolved into something that's a campus activity. Originally, the way we did it was we had faculty and staff pick a selection, and it's a lightning talk. So you get to just do a short presentation within an hour, and a whole group presented. And you can see from the list I have, somebody presented from Moby Dick. And actually, interestingly enough, one professor came and summarized War and Peace in 3 minutes. And I think that was an achievement, because I think that's one of the longest books ever written. But then we thought about it, and I said, you know what? I think we should get students involved in this. And then we did our Get Your Groove On, which I kind of came up with as an idea to grab students. And we had students coming not only to read a selection. I had one, and it was actually in tandem with Black History Month, so we had a number of presentations related to that. But then we actually had students come and read a poem or read some prose, something that they wrote. So that really showed me, to be very candid, the potential of this. So what we're going to do now, and we had many presenters. We had 15 plus presenters the last time. Even our admiral, our president of the campus, came and read a selection. So it was very impressive, and it was really a wonderful event. We had students, we had faculty, and it was not just summarizing a book. It could be an article, it could be a lyric, it could be a song, it could be an expression, something the president said. But then we had the students who came and read original poetry and something from a journal, which next time we're going to do something called, a connection with this, also have people read, called Poetry and Prose Out Loud. And there we're going to do a theme, and we're going to have students come and read things that they wrote. In other words, we're trying to mine and develop the potential of students. We even had one student, Kelly, who showed up at the event and said, "Excuse, could I read something?" And I thought to myself, this is fantastic. A student came and said, "Can I read something?" And this is profound to me, because our students, as in all campuses, they're very busy. They're so busy with their work, and they just feel, overwhelmed by work, etc. But they come and read something that proves to me the efficacy of this program. And we're going to expand it and do something more with it, but keep on mining the potential of our students, which is tremendous in writing and in expression and in learning and communicating. That's the great part. They were wonderful communicators. So I was very happy with it.
Great. So with that, could you talk about the advertising for this? So how do you primarily advertise this? Because it takes a lot for the students to put themselves out there in a vulnerable position, but then how do you attract them, right? So what's the messaging there?
Well, I mean, look, we're very, very fortunate that we have a fantastic graphics department, graphics person for department. We have a graphics person who's very talented, and put together the virtually all of these flyers, with the exception maybe of the impending storm, which are the Humanities Department Secretary Sandra Hunt put together. I give her kudos; she did a beautiful job, because our graphics designer was busy with a major campus activity. So she puts it together, and based on a concept, as you see, it's beautifully laid out. That is then sent out to the faculty, to students. It's also put on what the students have something called a porthole. So we put it out, and then we take the flyers literally, and we put them out on campus. And Verna Wong, who's our graphics expert, has actually made tent flyers for us, which are on cardboard, and we put those out in the cafeteria. We call that our mess deck. So we do, I think, a good job on that, and get the message out, and we see the results of that in terms of attendance, which tend to be, generally speaking, very, very good and growing. Great. And as I'll discuss with the table talks as well.
Great, and you're a good segue to the impending storm flyer here. So this is a really interesting sort of presentation, and obviously it's coming up, right? So it hasn't happened yet, and it's really timely as we talk about infrastructure and we see all the current natural disasters that we're having. So I'd love to hear how this came about, and then there's a lot of people that you're juggling, coordinating. So I think people would be really interested to hear how this is managed.
Well, this one, okay. This was perfect for Maritime. I should mention I teach American Foreign Policy, and Professor Clegg who's the wargaming head at National Defense University, who I know, Skyped with our class already a number of times. We did a pandemic simulation. We did a civil war in Africa simulate. We did all kinds of interesting simulations. And then it dawned on me that, wait a minute, maybe, and we were talking, so maybe you want to come and do a presentation in person. Well, that would be amazing. And he agreed. And then he said, well, and then we were talking about it. We said, what's maritime? Maybe I could come up with something maritime related. And then he developed, this is something that he tweaked and developed, something that he'd done originally, as it says on the flyer, for members of Congress and the executive branch. So he's tailor-made and updated that presentation for the maritime students who are obviously fundamentally interested in issues of maritime policy and maritime security. So this is kind of right up our alley, totally appropriate for our students, for our faculty. So when he comes, we're going to have him have lunch with our cadets in the regiment and give him a tour of the training ship and try to, and so we can meet the students. And we hope we can do more things like this. And I have very high hopes for it because it's a simulation, so it's very stimulating intellectual activity. And as I said, it seems it's almost tailor-made for our campus. I should mention again, this is a team effort because we need to work with the regiment, with the head of our regiment, Captain Hamp, has been very helpful on this, and all the different, again, departments, chairmen, different departments are involved in this because it just doesn't happen. We have our conference services in order to arrange. I mean, there are all different departments involved in making a campus event like this. So I have high hopes for it. And all I can say is I'm very appreciative to my colleagues for their support of this. And I have high hopes for it because I think it's really kind of amazing. It's kind of cool. I don't know what else to say about it. Amazing.
No, definitely it is. And I think, we don't see, at least I don't see a lot of these conversations happening. And I know that Maritime is, sort of a unique in this circumstance. But, so my question about this, and obviously it hasn't happened yet. So hopefully we'll hear what happens, right? And I'd love to see some of the outcome. But,
Sure.
How do you think that this is going to affect your students in terms of their thought process or being more thoughtful that issues aren't as easy as they at first seem, right? So is that a conversation that you're going to be having afterwards or?
Right. I think this one, I have to be very candid about it. And this was a little bit different than our table talks or lightning talks. I mean, this is really I believe is a professional activity for our students in global business and transportation, our regiment students, our cadets. I mean, this is what they do in their careers, that they're interested in this. So this, I believe, is yes, it's interesting to do a war game, but it also provides a conversation and learning about this subject, which is very much in tandem with their studies. So this is one way I don't think that this is going to provoke a discussion of whether we should fund maritime, infrastructure. I don't think so. That's not what it's designed to do, although clearly our infrastructure is very important. But this one, I think, is more to meet the needs of, it's a war game. So, there's no midterm or final here. It's that students are coming and they're going to enjoy it because, that's the point. It's stimulating, intellectual, but it really works in tandem with their career plans, so that they've gone through this and had a chance to do some thinking about subjects that they are becoming expert in, to be very candid.
No, that's wonderful. I can't wait to hear more about it.
Sure.
So I have on the screen now the library lecture series, Reflections on the Holocaust and Turbulent Times. And, I think I'd love to hear how you handled this event. And then, obviously there's so many you can't see me, but I'm air quoting opinions about certain details in history and, revisionist history. But I'd love to know when we're talking about something that might be considered sensitive on a campus setting, like what do you and the team prepare for? You say you do a few dress rehearsals and, I know you like to set the tone and the expectation. So I'd love to just know everything about that event.
Well, first of all, this is a library lecture. So on these library lectures, I basically work with our library staff, and particularly Shantae Hope, who's our outreach librarian, and we really work as a team, and we really plan all these programs. This one I've done now for the last couple of years. Now, to be very candid, for disclosure, my parents were in Auschwitz, so the subject is very interesting to me, and I'm also contemplating and planning to prepare a course on the Holocaust. That's just to put that aside for the moment. The purpose of this is really part of our diversity and inclusion initiative, and also to emphasize toleration, tolerance, and that's, so let me just give you the multiple, what the purpose is. What's the takeaway here? The takeaway is that many of our students, candidly, are not very familiar with this subject, to be very candid. And secondly, the issue of tolerance, toleration, and just civility in today's society. I need not emphasize enough, I cannot emphasize enough how troubling it is in terms of the status of civility in our society. And if I may be very candid about it, I put a picture of, in one of my talks, of a counterpole, the Charlottesville neo-Nazis against Nazis marching in Hitler's time. Mm-hmm. And what I'm trying to do is to open students' eyes, and I do perfectly indicate it's my own opinion based on my family experience, but I must say, and then at the end of the day, the takeaway is, you know, be civil, be respectful of other people. That's the point of this. It's a history lesson, yes, but it's also, what can we learn? Why did this happen? What can we learn from it? And that is the purpose of it. And I do find, and I'm amazed to see the students are riveted, shocked by what they see. It's basically a PowerPoint that I do, and I talk about various aspects of the Holocaust, and the students don't know much about. I mean, I'm not saying in our day and age today, so many things are busy and they're not familiar with it, and I try to make them familiar with it in an informative fashion. But then please understand what I'm trying to say, which is civility and respect is the key. Okay, and we live in turbulent times where civility. I mean, to me, again, I would like to, if I can say may I say a personal aside, that to me, is it okay, Kelly, to say that to me, with my parents' background and my knowledge of this field, to see people marching in Charlottesville with tiki torches and Nazis marching is so impactful. And of course, what occurred in Tree of Life in Pittsburgh, all these things, it's important, not just because of the Holocaust, but that we should step back a minute and figure out what's going on in our society. And that also is what we do in the table talks, which is a good segue when we talk about that. Mm-hmm. Talking about what's going on, step back a minute and evaluate what is going on, learn a lesson, but apply it to contemporary times. So it's kind of learning about things you might not know about, but also applying it in your daily activities and you know, in terms of your civility and behavior to other people and treating people with respect. And I think that's the lesson I'm trying to impart. And I think it works. I think, you know, from what the reaction, I think it works.
I've heard that you have, you know, students that come up and they say, like, when is the next one? And I think that, you know, when we were planning this, we had this conversation about, you know, there is a lot of noise, and they have a much more like disciplined structure. So they have additional things that they have to get done in their day-to-day activities. But, you know, this is obviously very positive, you know, and impactful discussions for the students. So I think, you know, I'm going to ask you this question, but don't answer it until later. I want you to tell me your favorite program, but we'll do it as sort of a recap. And I'd love to know, you know, how the effect on the students and maybe their reflections, because now we're moving into, you know, Seafarers Rights is definitely not the same as, you know, discussing World War II.
I mean, this is a program I worked on with the library with Shantae, and you know, I mean, we organized it. It was a very informative program, but you know, that was one program, and candidly, that one I thought would have another further symbiosis, a connection to Pre-Law Club. We want to do some kind of maybe a field trip out to the center and do some things more with Doug Stevenson. He gave an outstanding talk, but again, this one is informative, but also it keys into and is in sync with what our students should know, because they might not know enough about what seafarers do out in the world and what challenges they face. So this one, I think, was more quasi-professional than
Right. And like, another campus, like the business department might have something, like CPA related, and this is
exactly.
that sort of
Exactly.
that comparison. And it's really interesting to see the specifics of how Maritime offers these experiences, and other campuses offer certain things like massage or biomed, clinical
Exactly.
trials. So I have just a question before we move on to the next slide.
Sure.
You referenced earlier about personal connections. Do you think that if there's someone listening or watching who is on a campus and they're thinking about doing some programming, but they don't know who to get, and they're certainly not thinking that the Hamilton route is the correct way, can you expand on like how valuable connections that we might take for granted in our professional life can be to bring people in to leverage the events?
Right. Well, this is an interesting point. I mean, again, it goes back to, I don't know, I'll call it creativity or vision or whatever, or just being lucky. I mean, I don't want to, I'm giving away my trade secrets. So why not? I'm a C-SPAN junkie.
Okay,
confession. And the truth of the matter is that I'm always watching C-SPAN day and night, and I'm always watching, and they have panels and discussions all the time. And they have the most amazing presenters on there. I mean, incredible subjects. And I'm looking at the subjects that they're presenting on history and all kinds of things. It's not just politics and history, but it's all kinds of things. And that gives me ideas. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, that really looks interesting. Maybe I can glean something from that. But I'm also reading around to see what is out there in the culture that might be interesting to students. I'm looking. I don't know how to answer that question.
right.
I mean, if I'm doing a law program, then I'm looking around for something that's interesting to the pre-law club or to something legal. We're working on an idea right now to bring a lawyer. We brought some lawyers in, which I don't have here presented, for some war stories about what's it like to be an admiralty lawyer. That's a very interesting subject for our students, many of whom want to go to law school and do admiralty law. So we're always looking for practical things, but also interesting things. So again, the world is out there. Put your creativity together and figure it out. You can really, and by the way, Kelly, today with email, with the Twitter, with all Facebook, you can reach people today with LinkedIn that you could never reach in days past. You couldn't, but now I write an email. The truth, let me just give you an example of that.
Sure, no.
I watched Brian Stolars on C-SPAN Book TV, okay? And he was talking about how he exonerated this inmate from death row, and how he found out that the evidence that was used to convict this poor guy was actually seen by the detective, and it was in the detective's garage. Okay, right? He's talking about this. He wrote a book. So what did I do? I looked on the internet. Okay, I found his law firm. I emailed him a note, and I said, "Hey, can you Skype with us?" And he said, "Yeah." And I'll tell you, that was really very. The students were very, very interested. And the best part is when he finished his presentation on Skype, students got up and asked him questions, which we also saw with General McMaster, which we'll talk again. We had about half an hour of questions. That's also the great part of it, where students are getting up, just being interested and asking them about this fascinating case. And I just found them on C-SPAN.
No, that is a great example. And that's sort of what I was asking, right? So I think a lot of people take for granted the connections that they have because they feel that they're not big enough, or that, maybe that's already been done. But when we're thinking about our audience isn't necessarily watching C-SPAN. Or reading the books or following the news as we are. So I think that's a good point. Is like, first of all, have hope that if you find someone, they might actually write you back, and to not take to cast aside your own experiences. I think that is good.
I mean, and certainly if I come across somebody in my travels, or if I'm doing a panel or something, and I see, wait, I just did, for example, I organized a panel on Venezuela, which you'll see I have a program on that. In DC for a think tank, and I said, wait a minute, maybe you want to come to Maritime College? I said, yeah, sure.
Hmm.
you never, you don't lose anything by asking. They can just say no. But there are interesting people out there that we can bring here to our students that will, and I'll discuss on Venezuela, the reaction on that one, which is fantastic, where the
Right.
students benefited, but we'll talk about that in a
Well,
moment. But
here we
again,
have Australia. So,
yeah,
I mean, that's an interesting conversation
well,
topic.
this one was really it was a history, but also fantastic program because what was great about it was this is Captain Cook and the HMB Endeavour, Australian America, Mateship, and all those great things. But the interesting thing is that the folks from the Australian government's Maritime Museum came over,
Hmm.
and one of their curators did a presentation on indigenous art, indigenous Australian art of indigenous Australian people, and it was absolutely fantastic. First of all, beautiful art, beautiful stuff. But can you imagine your students here at Maritime College in the Bronx, okay? All right, candidly, all right, myself too. I'm a Manhattan kid, right?
Hmm.
And I'm seeing a presentation about something so fascinating that I can't, it's cultural engagement and it's just fantastic. And the story of Captain Cook also is an engaging story, and we're Maritime College. So, we were able to, promote an interesting subject. And we're looking for the Endeavor, and then we had the folks come down from Rhode Island who were looking for it. So it was just great. It was perfect for maritime, but it also had a lot of cultural value and just general value in terms of understanding the relationship between the U.S. and Australia. And I also had invited the Australian Consul General to give a talk here on U.S. Australian relations. Australia is a great friend of the United States, and we're here in New York, and in New York we have all kinds of consuls and diplomats and all kinds of people, and they love to come to the campus and interact with the students, and the students love it. So, and they learn something. So we're
Right.
also trying to do global engagement at the same time.
And I think global engagement, because you can work through, even if you're in upstate New York, there's,
Right.
people always traveling through and there's museums. So you give a good idea to even, I know it sort of worked out differently for your campus based on the connection to Captain Cook and the consulate. But, I think it's important for people listening to think about if you have a museum, or even if your library has a museum, or you're connected through art history, that there are other speakers or people that might not even they don't even have to come to campus. Like you talk a little bit more about Skype in a little while, but
Yeah.
the idea that you can leverage the technology to give more immersive
Yeah.
events to your students.
I also wanted to mention, Kelly, the fact that our faculty, we have maritime historians here. We have the preeminent maritime historians here in the humanities department in our campus. So we were able to create, a relationship with the Maritime Museum from Australia and our Maritime Museum. And
Mhm.
their folks went and had a tour of our Maritime Museum. So there was just a great symbiosis there too, which we benefited from as well. So all I'm saying is that it was a win-win all around, and it was perfect for us. And again, and it had has a wonderful, it's an amazing mystery story about Captain Cook and what happened to him, and all those interesting things, and plus the relationship with Australia and America. So it was just a lot of fun, and it was very successful.
Right. So definitely, people shouldn't overlook those connections that they already have on
Right.
campus when they're sourcing events. Now, this is probably one of the most immersive experiences because it really gets students to talk while they're having their meals, right? So their dinner.
Right.
These are the table talk series, the mess deck. So
Right.
I have about 4 slides on these, so I might just jump around and you can call me back to
Well,
one of
why don't we just go one by one and
Okay,
do
that
the
works.
topics, and then when we get to the last one, which is the one we're doing upcoming, so
Hmm.
the one with power of speech, what you say matters. Again, that one is fundamentally important on civility, right? What you say matters, and you should be careful when you speak and how you speak about people and how you speak to people. This is very important.
Hmm.
And that was a great discussion. And about the dinner, students come to dinner, they don't have to participate in the conversation. And what we've done is we pick up their dinner in our mess deck, that's what we call it, our cafeteria. And then we have a room adjoining, and we sit there, and it's very comfortable with nice tables, and they sit and listen. And more and more we find the students participate. You can go to example 10. We just can flip through those quickly.
Sure.
Parkland and the Second Amendment. What now? Well, this is a topic of really tremendous significance and one that our students have strong opinions on. So we had a great discussion. We started this one off where Judge Ingram, who I mentioned earlier, who is a state Supreme Court judge, gave a short talk, a very short précis on the Second Amendment. And we had faculty present and students present, and we had a really lively discussion. I was very happy. And the truth of the matter is, the discussion, we only had light and there was no heat whatsoever. And that's my point about these. You can have a discussion about a civic subject, and it doesn't have to be a heated discussion, which you asked about before. It's not. It can be informative. And we had a great discussion, and it was really very informative. And we heard everybody was interested in hearing everybody else's opinions. Maybe you can flip to the next one, and then the next one, and then we'll just continue there.
Sure. So this is the Kavanaugh.
This is the one I did on the midterm elections of Kavanaugh, Is America Falling Apart? It's a provocative title, obviously. And we had a pretty nice, right? I originally wanted to say, Is the World Falling Apart? But I don't know. I didn't want to be too controversial. But in any event, we found that students, and I just want to say one thing about table talks, if I may. This was an outgrowth of another program that I did before, which is called Come and Talk or Open Conversation, where we did this at lunch. And we had one of these before the 2016 elections. And then we also had one on the Constitution, which is just like people would come around lunch. We had pizza and we just talked. This is a little different. And I think this is better because dinner, the students all have dinner, they don't have to, lunch is always sometimes a conflict. They're studying, they're preparing for a class, they have a class. But in the end of the day, it works out. And this was a very good discussion. Let me go to the next 12, and then we can talk more. You can ask me about it.
Great.
Now, this one is the one we're planning for March 19th. And this one is, again, it's just the kind of, I could have put 20 subtopics. There's so many things going on. The wall, national emergency, Democratic House, 2020 prospects. That really heated up since we came up with this. And polarization. What now? What's next? To me, the discussion of alternate realities is very important. What do I mean by that? Mm-hmm. There's an MSNBC reality and a Fox News reality. So the world is completely polarized. If I ask somebody who is on one side what's going on, the facts, they give one fact, a set of facts. If I ask them on the other side, they give me another set of facts. So I want to really plumb and analyze this and have students speak about it. What do you think about this? And not just from a legal point of view, but also from cultural and societal point of view. What do you think is going on here? And what's your reaction to it? So I think this will be, and as I said, I was thrilled when a student yesterday in my con law class came, when's the next one? That's it. That's all I have to say. That's my reward.
When's your reward.
Yeah. When's the next one? That's my reward. When students ask what it is and they want to come and have a discussion. The truth of the matter is that the students are very busy. They're especially in Maritime, where we have students who are working on license, and they're very busy. The ship, they're just extremely busy with the regiment, etc. We don't just have regimental students. We have many civilian students, but I'm saying they're all busy. They're studying. They're busy. So to get them to come to dinner, they have to come to dinner, because I think usually they have dinner, to sit down and have a discussion. That's a space where they don't have to participate in the discussion, but they can have a chance to listen to a discussion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they know that you're having them.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say that they know you're having them, right? So that's important.
Absolutely.
And I wanted to ask you.
Yeah, we try to urge them to read the paper and follow civic events and follow what's going on. And that's all part of that, So.
Right. So dinner, you think that, since it's the end of the day, would you encourage other people on other campuses to maybe think about having something in the dining hall or adjacent to see, right? To test it out if they've never done it? Because I think that sometimes mealtime.
Kelly, the only issue is you have commuters. We have a lot of students living on campus. If you have a lot of students living on campus, okay, regimental students, then you have essentially I say a captive audience in a sense. They're not a captive audience because before these events, I walk around the mess deck, around the cafeteria, and I say, would you like to come and have a discussion about, about what goes on? And they go like, no. So like, would you like to come and just bring your dinner? Bring your dinner, 45 feet into the other room and have this guy. No. So the
Okay.
answer is, I'm working on that. And but by the way, I shouldn't have said that because actually sometimes say, okay, we'll come. And even though they're not my students, they don't feel, there's no compulsion whatsoever. But then but we're finding that the number of students who are coming really is growing and growing. And we have a very nice large crowd. So, but I'm still, I'm always trying to recruit. Anyway, so.
No, I think that's good. And I think it also reminds us that, we have to have those face-to-face conversations with our students as well as our colleagues. So when you're going around to the tables inviting them, it makes them think that, there's actually something that they can participate in. So I think that's
Absolutely.
can be a little funny, but I think it works.
But I'm not shy. I'm not shy about it because if I try and I hit a certain small percentage, I still bring a couple of students in, and then they might be interested in it. And that's the whole idea.
No, definitely. And now I have the McMaster slide on, and this is, again, you've had even Scott Kelly, who's an alum, come to campus and talk to students in a variety of ways. But, this is a different event because this was done by Skype. So I know there's going to be some questions about how that worked on your campus. And then you have like such a big VIP, right? So HR McMaster. So tell us about that.
First of all, about Scott Kelly. This was Scott Kelly's a Maritime grad. He's part of our family here. He's just an amazing individual, wrote a book, an inspirational book. So
he's easier then, right?
Well, no, it wasn't not easy. I didn't certainly coordinate that at all. That was done by our administration, but that was just a signature event for us, and it was a super, super successful event. So, those events are great for us and great for the students because they get to interact with someone like that. Now, Thatcher, now with McMaster, there, he's not able to come to campus. So the idea was, could you Skype with us? And I happened to have met him because I had written an article for the National Defense University Journal, and I was invited to hear him talk, and he's amazing. And I went over to him and I said hello, and I introduced myself. So I guess that there's no magic in that. And he said, sure, send me an email. So that's what I did, and he was very gracious. But I could say about this program that what was just very, very was great. It was fantastic about it is he was very patient and listened to the questions students asked, question after question after question, and he addressed every single question. And the best part was at the end, he said, the students asked great questions. So he was very patient, but they did. I made them, by the way, prepared. That was my American Foreign Policy. But we opened it up to the entire campus, and we found that, to having a person of this stature that we could have via Skype. He wouldn't be able to come in person because he's not proximate to us, but he was able to come. He shared his ideas on in national international security. It was a very interesting overview. And then the students, they prepared, but they asked very good questions. And it was fantastic. They're just fantastic. And the students loved it. They didn't stop talking about it. They still don't stop talking about it. I asked the question, interacted with the former national security advisor to the president. It's amazing. So those opportunities should be presented to the students. And if they can be, we do it. So we're really happy to say that.
And that's a huge partnership with your IT office for sure. Correct me if I'm wrong, but making sure that's like a very risky one-time connection opportunity.
I mean, of course, we did that in our Maritime Academic Center. We have all the beautiful big screens there. It's a beautiful room. It's a beautiful building, beautiful venue, and IT is pivotal to it, of course, and set it up for us and ran it through and made sure that it worked perfectly, which it did. And the way that we do that is we coordinate with his IT person, and they coordinate, and there's a lot of that has to be done, and a test has to be done in advance to make sure it runs seamlessly.
Right. No, that's good to point out instead of folks that might be listening saying like, oh, they just Skyped with General McMaster one day. And there's a lot of still organization
That's a good one, Kelly.
behind the scenes. Do you have his cell phone number too? No, I'm just kidding.
Right.
So you had mentioned the Venezuela event, right? That you were able to pull together, and that you had some unique reactions to this event. So
yeah, I mean, one student came over to me after and said, Wow, that was a great program. I was sitting right near him, and I just was so happy to hear this reaction because it meant that it meant that the student understood that this is a world class person who was president of the UN Security Council, an ambassador to Venezuela, obviously before the current regime.
Yes.
He's now in the opposition, and was really able to give an overview of what was going on. And I'll tell you, the questions were just fantastic. And we had standing room only. I mean, it was really unbelievable. On a subject like this, for me, it was a gamble because I didn't know if students are going to show up or not, Venezuela. But you know what? And it's funny also, Kelly, I would say this. The next day after we did this program, there was a revolution in Venezuela that Guaido took power. All these things happened. And the New York Times announced a real change in the events in Venezuela. And I think we did it. I'm just kidding. But
yeah, you got lucky, right? That's what you were talking about.
No,
a little bit of luck.
Yeah, it was amazing, the timing of it. But, but when a student comes to me and says, oh, wow, I was sitting right in front and right near him. And it was not just global engagement, but also being impacted and understanding that you're learning and hearing from someone who is telling you that, I met with Nikki Haley about this, who's our ambassador to the UN, and then I discussed this with the president. I discussed this this is someone who operates on a level where the students should see, how does this work? Who are these people that operate in international diplomacy? How do they do that? It's not just the substance of what goes on, but who is this person? And how does he get to that stature? And you see, when you see the person, it becomes a role model too.
Right. And they get to tell people, about it, which is great as I'm thinking about like marketing, admissions, and alumni as well. So the event's success and the students' reaction, positive reaction, carries through to some long lasting connections that you made with the students on campus, not just, for their own positive impact, but to look back on the campus and their how they were able to develop the students. So I think that's
well. I also would add the following point, which I make this soon. I say, why are all these things important? Well, okay, when you finish in college and you go off to your career, okay, you will occasionally have a discussion with people. You're not going to be doing your career. Somebody will turn to you and say, what about this? What do you think about that? So I said, it would be useful. Let's say your boss says something and asks you a question. It would be useful to know something about all this stuff because maybe one day, you might get, a conversation about something. You might have a conversation. You'll know something about it. And I just think that I get a connection there. People go, oh, wait a minute, that could help my career. Oh, okay, I get that. So, knowing about things is helpful. And that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah, and I think that's a good tone to set for. We talked before about it's all light and no heat, but having that say we're here to talk so that things is not the same as we're here to talk so we can argue, right? So I think that is a good way.
I want to make one other point that's very, very important when we talk about vision here. When we do these kind of programs, okay, they have to be student-centered, okay? Kind of a message that we have from our Admiral here, Admiral Fultis, which we are student-centered. What does that mean? I'm interested, okay, for when I run these, I want to know what the students think. Okay? Yes, I can provoke or precipitate discussion, but I want to know what they think. Tell me what you think. Students always say, what do you think? I said, no, I want to know what is on your mind. So that's the purpose of these table talks, is to hear from the students, but we want to prime the pump a little bit and give them some ideas to work with, but then tell me what you think. That's the point of it, to express your ideas. So and the combination is light and not heat, and tell me what you're thinking, and precipitating thinking
right
on the part of the students. That's the idea.
No, wonderful. So I've switched it to the foreign policy challenges slide. If you wanted to add anything on that.
Well, I mean that, I teach American foreign policy. So again, this is global engagement. It's just a subject that we like to be eclectic. So every year we kind of try to mix up the subjects and put different subjects. But this one seems so compelling because the world is in disarray. I mean, if you see what I wrote there, the world is in disarray. Every time you open up the newspapers, there's some world cataclysm. North Korea is going to shoot a missile at us, or or who knows, Syria is and millions of refugees and people are suffering and all these other, Venezuela and all these things. So it's interesting to have a dialogue and a discussion about what goes on. And also, some of this is, of course, of interest, particularly to our students, like the South China Sea as a maritime issue. So, and we have our students are very sophisticated and take courses, touch on these subjects as well. So, in other words, it's kind of, and I'm hoping it will be appealing. And when we've done different aspects in politics before, so we're going to try to do this one, and this will actually be this March 26th.
That's good. Yeah, and here's your list. So we've already seen a few, right? So we have the bond, and then you have two. We didn't talk about the spice trade.
Dr. Howard, yes, Dr. Howard talked about political correctness, very interesting, and Dr. Talia Kozo from Cornell is going to be a visiting speaker talking about the spice trade. By sea, which is perfect for our students. He's a top-notch, top-tier historian. And the key is exposing our students to top-tier historians is very, very important.
Great. So if someone was listening to this and they were thinking about, they've never done a civility event or discussion on campus, what do you think the starter one should be? And, should it be the First Amendment, the Constitution? Should it be the Constitution Day? What's your advice? Like if I was asking.
I don't know. I would have to know more about the campus and the students. Are there commuters? Are there students dorming? Who are the students? And then what kind of courses they're taking and what kind of programs they have, because Maritime's programs in some respects have some uniquely different programs than other campuses.
The campus culture.
But I think the bottom line is to acquaint students with civic issues, and the easiest way to do it is in a forum where it's comfortable to talk. And that's why I like doing this in the cafeteria, or I like that. I don't know if that's my favorite. I don't know. I love the Constitution Day. I always love that program. That is so much fun.
So that's your favorite.
Especially when we did the trivia quiz, and then we got foghorns to press when you wanted instead of a buzzer, because one year we had a buzzer and we couldn't hear it. So it's like so cool. When people know the answer, they press this foghorn. It's crazy. It's like a wild thing. But you know what? We're having fun, and we're talking about the Constitution. See? So that's the point. We're trying to, so you can have fun and learn and have a good time. And we really, the teams are at it. And then, of course, everybody gets a prize. So that's the good part.
Right. And I think like you said, you're having fun. So
exactly.
Here's again something where you're not necessarily having fun in the sense, but you're, this constitutional law case studies, you're able to probably, I would assume, discuss these case studies after the Skype session.
Right. Well, this is a course, right? So this is a course, but what's important about this is that what I tried to do here is we had the case that just was heard on last Wednesday, February 27th, which is the Bladensburg Cross case in Maryland. Maybe people are familiar with it. And it's really a very significant case. And the American Humanists are trying to have the cross removed, and then the Alliance Defending Freedom is trying to have it retained. So I actually did a little research and contacted the American Humanists, got their legal director, and then contacted Alliance for Defending Freedom, who actually has presented on one of the Constitution Days, to get the two completely different points of view on the case. I mean, and these are the actual litigators involved in the case. So in other words, we give the students an opportunity to be exposed to, we could read the case, we could read the briefs, we could read the papers, but how about listening to the practitioners talking about it? That to me is invaluable, invaluable. And so, but again, to emphasize the point that you said before about Skype and Zoom are tremendous resources for education. And again, it's kind of your imagination, which you said, your vision before. I mean, this one was real. I mean, Nathan Lewin, I happen to know as a major constitutional law expert, and has actually argued about 25 cases in the Supreme Court. And he's been, major, and he really gave us his perspective. And he's already Skyped with my class before because he had a good relation. He was very close to Justice Scalia, and he talked about Justice Scalia. So then they get a personal interaction with people practicing this field. Not just, there's nothing wrong with reading the papers and learning the case, but when you hear it, and then you can ask questions. And they were asking questions, and it was quite amazing. We also was very interesting, I just mentioned it aside, we did a Skype with someone from the Atlantic Council who was in favor of the Iran deal, right? The Iran nuclear deal. And many of the students in the foreign policy class were not. And that was a lively discussion, I have to tell you. That was really lively. It was fantastic. Yeah, fantastic discussion. So, I mean, I thought, you know what? If my students basically don't like the Iran deal, how about if I find somebody who is in favor of it and have a dialogue? You know, that's a dialogue. A dialogue is not, I did in the past have someone who was an expert on the Iran deal who opposed it, but I figured, you know what, that's a dialogue. So they learn something from that. Otherwise, to just have somebody validate your point, that's learning, but learning is really dialoguing with someone who has the completely opposite point of view and can back it up with arguments. And that's what I wanted them to do. Back up your point with arguments. This is with not just arguments, I don't mean argumentative, but back up your points with what you believe is the right idea and promote your idea. Right. Yeah, exactly. Precisely.
No, I think that's good. And yeah, I appreciate the emphasis on the fact that, you're, downstate, you have, transportation, and you have a lot more options for people coming into campus. But again, underscoring that utilizing technology to be able to make a connection with someone who wouldn't necessarily be able to travel to your campus is so huge. And I don't think, and hopefully people, maybe they're already doing this, but they realize that, students will come based on, how it's advertised too and framed, because you get that, oh, wow, I was able to Skype with, a bigger figure than, I had ever thought that I would be able to. So
it's a tremendous, Kelly, it's a great resource. I mean, it is. And we should, and taking advantage of it really, I think, enhances our educational mandate is just to teach, but not just to teach. It's of course the reading, the studying, the discussion, but having a discussion with a McMaster, General McMaster, and the level of his knowledge is so immense that it just, even osmosis would be good. I don't care. I mean, the kids are sitting there and they're just in the presence of somebody of this stature. I feel bad in itself, but then to ask questions and dialogue, it was just fantastic.
No, it's been wonderful. So obviously you talked about your favorite being Constitution Day. So you answered my question. And I guess, we're just at 3 o'clock, but I wanted to ask this last question. Can you tell me one lesson that you've learned, either easy or hard, that's come out of working on these programs, or something that a takeaway?
Well, I mean, I think the one thing that is preparation. Mm-hmm. The lesson is you have to have good preparation and work with others in a team fashion. That's the key. To have the team working and being prepared. If you're going to do a conference like we did, or the Constitution Day, requires coordination, but preparation and working with a team and working with others.
And thank you.
That's how it becomes a success. And that's what I've learned. And I feel the more we work as a team, we can continue to produce these high-level things and do great things for the students in the campus.
Right, and also you stressed, when we were discussing it earlier, the value of thank you to your colleagues.
Sorry, thank you for saying that, Kelly.
no, thank you.
Very important. One thing that's fundamentally important, and I do it each and every time, and I think it's important. It's a lesson for everybody doing anything in general. Is the first thing I do at a conference, at a Constitution Day, is the first thing is, who do I thank who worked on this project? Because there's a lot of people that deserve kudos and thanks and appreciation for doing that. Yes, and I thank you for reminding me that, because that's fundamental, because it's not one person, it's a group of people getting together and working as a team and producing this product. And I just want you to know who they are. Right. And I think they also appreciate it, because they are in their departments and they're doing what they're doing, but they have the pride is that the campus was able to produce this and we all work together. That's where the glow is at the end,
No, that is perfect. That's a perfect ending. So Mark, I thank you. And for those of you that see on the screen, your email, I'll also put it in the description of this video. And again, this will be saved in perpetuity on Workplace for folks to forward and share. But again, I want to thank you, Dr.
Thank
Mark
you.
Meyerowitz, for presenting all of your high quality civic programs with us. I'm sure some people will be reaching out to you to ask
Please.
further advice, especially in the technology aspect and juggling all of these with a full-time class schedule as well. But thank you so much, and enjoy the rest
Thank
of your
you,
day.
and thank you, Kelly, very much for the privilege of doing this, and it's just a great privilege, honor. I can't thank you enough for having the opportunity to present these things. That we take a lot of pride in it, and we're very, very happy to see the results and reap the benefits. And if others can share in this, that would be even better.
Oh, awesome. So thank you so much. Have a great day.
Pleasure. So long.
Bye.